personality, we're interested in personality in sport because it may be that certain personalities are more suited to certain sports, or we could look at it from the other argument that certain sports might shape your personality and make your personality into certain traits. So there are three main things that we need to look at in personality. The first thing is that we need to look at three theories. Alright, so the three main theories that we look at in sports psychology, which is trait theory, social learning theory, and interactionist theory, which you should be aware of. So we'll look at explaining personality from those 3 points of view. The second aspect is testing. We need to know different ways of testing personality. We will have a look at some tests and whether personality profiling is of any use. So, in other words, should we look to profile certain athletes or performers in order to select them for certain sports? And the last main bit really is the profile of mood states, which is a study by Morgan, which was to do with profiling that found out certain traits that were linked to elite performance. And this is an often asked exam question. So a good place to start with personality is with a definition, and there are various ones, but you can see these two definitions here. But the key factor, as it says here, is uniqueness. So it's those traits or the characteristics which make a person unique. So into the theories of personality, and the first theory is trait theory. This is our nature theory. So obviously it looks at that we were born with a certain personality. So in other words, it's genetic, it's inherited. The equation at the top here, the B equals FP. These we can apply these little equations, and what they mean is that the B stands for behaviour, and the F equals function. And the P in this instance in brackets stands for personality. So what the equation's saying is that behaviour is the function of personality and personality alone. That means that your behaviour is determined by your personality traits, and that will always be the case. Because your personality is genetic and inherited, it's in there, it's natural, therefore that means it's going to be stable and enduring. Okay, so stable, it remains the same, and enduring, it lasts for a long time. And really, according to trait theory, you would keep your personality traits for all of your life. And then we need to link this to behaviour. So this is where the equation at the top comes in. Remember, the behaviour equals the function of personality. So we're looking at behaviour here, and we're saying that behaviour is consistent or generalised or predictable, all good words to say that behaviour remains the same really in all situations. So you can see an example might be someone who's shy would be shy in all situations. Remember, this is a theory. We're not saying that this is the actual truth. This is what trait theory suggests. So you should be able to criticise the theory. Various trait theories that we don't really need to know in much detail in terms of exam questions, but it's always useful to have an idea of what they are. So firstly, type A versus type B. So the personality types suggest that type A people have these traits of being irritable, anxious, competitive, etc. And this kind of sums the type A person up is that they are more prone to heart disease. They're just more highly strung. A type B person, conversely, is more calm, relaxed, quiet and focused. So, in terms of why we study personality in sports psychology, we need to think about which personality type is better suited to sport, or might that be certain sports. Cattell came up with 16 personality factors. So we looked at personality factors that are attributable to sport. And Eysenck's theory is a common theory that's often used, and here we look at two dimensions. The first one goes from extroversion to introversion. These are terms you've probably heard of before. So extrovert is enjoys being at the centre of attention and seeks that attention, and introvert is more happy in their own company and likes to work alone. Someone who's neurotic is a little bit unstable, as in that you don't know what you're going to get from them. They might be very, very happy and then very, very sad the next time. Someone who's stable, however, you know what you're getting. Steady Eddie, reliable kind of personality stays the same. So again, thinking about which dimensions or which traits are more useful for sport, again, that might come down to which sport we are playing. So here's Eysenck's dimensions. So you can see we're going from introvert here across to extrovert, and look at some of the words that are associated here. So all this introvert side: quiet and unsociable, passive, careful, thoughtful, peaceful. Extroverted, more active, optimistic, impulsive, sociable, outgoing, talkative. And then as we go from the neurotic up at the top here, so moody, anxious, touchy, restless, down to more stable, carefree, even-tempered and calm. So common question would look at trait theory. Simple, explain trait theory of personality. And here you would have a common mark scheme with the main points I would expect here is that it's inherited or genetic, stable and enduring, and that we behave in a certain way, i.e. behaviour is consistent. There is actually credit here again for naming one of the trait theories, like Eysenck or Cattell. And we haven't talked about RAS, but we're going to leave that bit. So, what is the personality profile of elite sports performers? So there's been lots of research projects that have looked into this, and you can see some of the results that have been found. So for example, team players being found to be more extrovert, anxious and dependent. So some of those things you may be seen as a positive, some like being dependent and anxious might be seen as a negative. So the question that we're asking here is that do certainly performers need personality traits to perform at the top level? So it may be argued that, for example, an elite performer has to be competitive, emotionally stable, for example, confident, those kind of things to be a top performer. Testing personality is the same as everything that we look at in sports psychology. So main methods are questionnaires, and the 16 personality factors that's been mentioned is one method. The Eysenck personality inventory, which you can have a go at, is another one which measures your extroversion, and the profile of mood states, which we'll come to later. Other methods: observation and interview. Now you need to be able to think about advantages and disadvantages of all methods. So, is this profiling any good? In other words, should we profile top performers or potential performers in order to look at who's going to be the best performers and which ones should play certain sports or which ones might be the top athletes in certain sports? So the Credusel approach says that we should do this, that personality profiling is of use to us, that we should look at certain personalities in terms of channeling people into the right sport for them to suit their personality, and indeed to suit whether they might be an elite athlete or not. The skeptical approach says that's a load of rubbish. They say there's much more important things that we need to look at, like, is the athlete actually any good? Do they have any skills? Have they got the physical capabilities and physiological capabilities, biomechanical, etc.? In other words, personality profiling shouldn't be done. And this is an argument, again, as in most of psychology, there isn't really a right and wrong answer. So the profile of mood states, this was a research study done by Morgan, and basically he looked at the mental health being a predictor of success in sport. The research found in various sports, so you can see things like running, rowing, wrestlers, and various other sports actually, that it found a common theme that the elite performers in these sports had high positive mental health characteristics, which was only one actually that he looked at, which is vigour. So being vigorous is kind of to go for it, to really strive to achieve, and that they had low negative mental health characteristics. So you can see things like being tense, being depressed, etc. And this was in comparison to the less successful athletes. So we basically come up with this graph. So the graph, as you can see, shows vigour here, and this is the elite profile. So you can see that their profile in vigour is very high, and that being the average across the middle, that all these other things, the elite profile is lower than average. So on things like tension, depression, vigour, fatigue, and confusion. To compare that, we would look at a normal athlete or someone who is just average would kind of have this average line across the middle here, so no peak. So you can see that with this profile, there's a shape here, and we sometimes call this the iceberg profile. So that's due to the shape that comes across like that. It's also worth knowing. It's worth knowing because on questions here, these terms that are used for the mood states, all six. If you can mention all six, that's going to pick you up some marks. So tension, depression, anger, vigour, fatigue, confusion are worth remembering. So, as we've said there, the iceberg profile, again, that's a term that's going to hopefully pick you up a mark, so remember that the elite performers show an iceberg profile. You may be asked to criticise the profile of mood states, and the main ones are to do with the fact that it measures mood. So we know that mood is variable, all right, and we're not actually measuring personality here, we're measuring someone's mood. Not all of the successful athletes have the profile, and many unsuccessful athletes do have the profile. And I think the common sense criticism here is that it's not really surprising that these negative mental health. So if you are tense and depressed, is it a shock really that you're not going to be an elite performer? So they kind of go hand in hand. And you can always discuss the usual problems that we have generally with questionnaires, like bias and things like that. So social learning theory is a theory by our good friend Albert Bandura, and he talks about that behaviour is a function of the environment and not personality. So we have E for environment. So this is all about the fact that it's learned. So social learning theory is learned. So you can see the key words at the bottom here. That behaviour is learned through our experiences in different environments. In other words, the environment determines your behaviour. So how do we learn? How do we learn our personality? Well, two key terms for social learning theory, as ever, are modelling. So this is modelling your behaviour on someone else. So think of a role model that you would copy their behaviour, and secondly, reinforcement. So if model behaviour is reinforced, or you think it's going to be reinforced, then you're more likely to repeat that behaviour. So there are a couple of studies that have. This brings on to our last theory, which is interactionist theory. So Interactions theory is called so because it's an interaction between the two main theories we've already discussed. So our trait theory and social learning theory. And here we have the equation B equals FPE because we have behaviour as the function of personality and the environment, both things put together. And it's thought that this is the most realistic explanation of behaviour, and that this is interactions theory has the most value behind it. So interactions theory, if we have the same, if we have the same environment, then we'll behave the same. So if you're in a certain environment and you're in that same environment a week later, it's likely that your behaviour will be about the same. However, change your environment and you will change your behaviour. So I think this fits nicely with the different environments that we go in at college, in our social life, when we play sport. It's likely that we'll behave more or less the same in each of those environments, but that when we change the environment, that we might act slightly differently. And a theory of an interactions theory example is Hollander's personality 3 levels. So we look at, Hollander suggests that in the middle here we have a psychological core, and that this is so this is the real us. Okay, so it's what we're really like. So the core is in here. So we can't really change that. This is the way that we're born. So if you like, that's the trait theory part. And then we have our typical responses. Okay, so the typical responses is the second band. And the typical responses are what we see every day. So the way that we behave and the way that we respond. So this is in here. So quite hard to change. All right, and it gives a good indication of what our psychological core is. So we will predict the psychological core by looking at typical responses. The last one is role-related behaviour. So that's the third band, and our role-related behaviour is where we would change. So we would adopt different behaviour in a certain environment. So this is the social learning part of the theory. So I hope you've enjoyed the screencast on personality, and make sure that you know all of the main parts that we need to know for the exam. Thank you very much.